On May 2, 2025, at exactly 10:01 a.m., a frantic 911 call came through to Nova Scotia's emergency dispatch. A mother's voice, trembling with panic, reported that her 2 children had vanished from their rural home. 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan had disappeared without a trace from a property surrounded by dense forest, steep ravines, and isolated wilderness. Within hours, one of Canada's largest search operations would be underway. Helicopters, cadaver dogs, over 100 volunteers combing through unforgiving terrain. But despite all the resources, all the desperate searching, all the prayers from a nation watching in horror, 7 months later, Lilly and Jack Sullivan are still missing. And the questions surrounding their disappearance have only grown darker, more complex, and more disturbing with each passing day. This is the story of a case that has captivated Canada and shocked the world. A case where the timeline doesn't add up, where witness statements conflict, where evidence points in impossible directions, and where investigators have interviewed 54 people, conducted polygraph tests, analyzed hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, and still cannot definitively say what happened to 2 innocent children on that spring morning in Nova Scotia. This is a case that has exposed troubling questions about family dynamics, investigative procedures, and the agonizing reality that sometimes children disappear and we may never know why. Before we dive deep into this investigation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for True Crime Vault. We bring you the most detailed, thoroughly researched documentaries on cases that demand answers. Cases like this one, where 2 children deserve justice and a family deserves truth. If you want to stay updated on breaking developments in cases that matter, subscribe now. And if this investigation resonates with you, hit that like button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on what you think really happened. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. We read every comment, and sometimes viewers provide insights that investigators need to hear, so don't hold back. Share your theories, your questions, your concerns. This case needs all the attention it can get. Now let's go back to the beginning, to the days before May 2nd, when Lilly and Jack Sullivan were still just regular kids living what should have been a normal, happy childhood in rural Nova Scotia. Lilly Sullivan was born in March 2019, coming into the world during the early spring in Canada's maritime provinces. Her younger brother Jack followed on October 29, 2020, born during the height of the pandemic when the world was a very different place. From the beginning, these 2 children would be inseparable. Lilly, the protective older sister; Jack, the energetic little brother who looked up to her. They had the kind of bond that siblings often share, especially when they're close in age and growing up in a relatively isolated environment where they relied on each other for companionship and play. The children lived with their mother, Malahia Brooks Murray, their stepfather, Daniel Martel, and their 1-year-old half-sister, Meadow, in a rural property on Gairloch Road in Lansdowne Station, Pictou County, Nova Scotia. For those unfamiliar with the area, Pictou County is located in the northern region of mainland Nova Scotia, facing the Northumberland Strait. It's a beautiful area, known for its natural scenery, tight-knit communities, and rural lifestyle. But it's also isolated, the kind of place where your nearest neighbor might be down a long dirt road, where cell phone service can be spotty, and where emergency services take time to arrive. The property where the Sullivans lived was particularly remote, described by those who visited as being surrounded by thick woods, steep embankments, and dense vegetation that could swallow a person whole if they wandered too far. The kind of wilderness that's both beautiful and dangerous, especially for small children. It was the kind of place where neighbors were few and far between, where the nearest help could be miles away, and where children playing outside could quickly find themselves in dangerous terrain if they strayed beyond the yard. The forest in that region is unforgiving. Thick underbrush, hidden ravines, areas where even experienced hikers can become disoriented. For a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, it would be treacherous. Daniel Martel's mother, Janie Mackenzie, also lived on the property, but in a separate building. This detail would become important later, as she would claim to have heard the children playing on the morning they disappeared. The property setup meant that there were adults in close proximity, but not necessarily watching the children at all times. It was a family compound of sorts, with multiple structures and multiple adults, but also with the challenges that come from rural living, privacy, and the assumption that children playing in their own yard are safe. According to Daniel Martel's statements to police, Both Lilly and Jack had stayed home from school on Thursday, May 1st and Friday, May 2nd, because Lilly was suffering from a cough. This is important to note. The children were not in school during the days leading up to their disappearance. They were home, under the supervision of their mother and stepfather. They had also been absent from school on Wednesday, April 30th, but that was a scheduled professional development day for teachers, so there were no classes anyway. This means that from April 30th through May 2nd, a span of 3 days, Lilly and Jack were at home full-time. 3 days where their whereabouts, their activities, their well-being were entirely dependent on what happened within that household. The question that would later haunt investigators: were Lilly and Jack actually sick? Or was there another reason they were kept home from school during those crucial days? Let's establish the timeline leading up to the disappearance, because this is where things start to get complicated, where the official story begins to show cracks, where the details don't quite line up the way they should. On April 30th, police records confirm that the entire family, Lilly, Jack, their mother Malehia, stepfather Daniel, and baby sister Meadow, went to the grocery store together. This was a routine shopping trip to prepare for the long weekend. They returned home at 10:19 p.m. that night. Security footage, receipts, and witness statements all corroborate this. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would suggest what was about to unfold just days later. The family was together, functioning normally, going about ordinary activities. If something terrible was being planned, there was no outward sign of it on April 30th. On the afternoon of May 1st, the day before the disappearance, the family of 5 traveled to the neighboring town of New Glasgow. New Glasgow is a small town, population around 9,000, located about 15 minutes from Lansdowne Station. It's the kind of place where people go for shopping, errands, basic necessities. Security cameras at a Dollarama store, a Canadian discount retail chain similar to Dollar General or Dollar Tree in the United States, captured footage at 2:25 p.m. showing Jack and Lilly with their family, shopping, appearing normal, alive, present. The footage shows a seemingly ordinary family outing. Malehia Brooks Murray pushing a shopping cart, Daniel Martel walking alongside, Meadow in the cart, and Lilly and Jack walking with them, looking at items on shelves, behaving like any children would in a store. This would be the last confirmed public sighting of the children, the last time anyone outside the immediate family would see Lilly and Jack Sullivan alive, the last independent verification of their existence. This timestamp is critical. Burn it into your memory. 2:25 p.m. on May 1st, 2025, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, captured on security cameras at Dollarama in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. From that moment forward, approximately 19 hours before they would be reported missing, the only people who claim to have seen the children alive are their mother and stepfather. No teachers, because they weren't in school. No neighbors, because the property was isolated. No friends, no other family members visiting. Just Malehia Brooks Murray and Daniel Martel, and Janie Mackenzie, who lived in a separate building and whose account of what she heard, not saw but heard, would become a key piece of the puzzle. So what happened during those 19 hours between the Dollarama sighting and the 911 call? Let's break it down minute by minute as best we can based on the statements given to police. According to Malehia Brooks Murray's initial statement to authorities, she put Jack and Lilly to bed at 9 p.m. on the evening of May 1st. A reasonable bedtime for young children. But here's where the story changes, where inconsistency creeps into the narrative. In a subsequent statement, she altered that time to 10 p.m. An hour difference. Why the discrepancy? Was it simply a mistake? The kind of error anyone might make under the extreme stress of having missing children? Memory can be unreliable, especially during trauma. But investigators notice these things. They note when stories change, when details shift, because sometimes those shifts indicate deception. Sometimes they indicate someone trying to adjust their alibi to fit evidence that's emerged. Brooks Murray also stated in her interviews with police that Daniel Martel had stayed awake after she went to bed that night, and that she didn't know what time he eventually went to sleep. This creates a window of time, potentially several hours late into the night of May 1st, where the stepfather was awake, moving around the house, and the mother was asleep. What was Daniel Martel doing during those hours? Was he watching television, working on something, or was something else happening? something that he and Malahia would later need to cover up. The children were supposedly in their beds, asleep, safe, but we only have the word of 2 people to confirm that. No one else was in the house, no one else tucked them in, no one else checked on them during the night. From 9 or 10 p.m. on May 1st until the morning of May 2nd, Lilly and Jack Sullivan's status is a black box. We know they were alive at 2:25 p.m. on May 1st because security cameras don't lie. We know they were reported missing at 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd. Everything in between is filtered through the accounts of Malahia Brooks Murray and Daniel Martel, accounts that already show inconsistencies. On the morning of May the 2nd, at 6:15 a.m., Brooks Murray called the school to report that both children would be absent due to illness. Lily's cough, she explained. A routine phone call to the school attendance line. Nothing alarming in the call itself, just a mother keeping her sick children home for another day. But think about the timing, 6:15 in the morning. If the children were still asleep, as they likely would be at that hour, how did she know they would need to stay home? Was Lily's cough really that bad? Or was there another reason, a darker reason, why she knew the children wouldn't be going to school that day? Was that call made because the children were sick in their beds? Or was it made because the children were already gone, already beyond help, and she needed to create a paper trail showing she believed them to be alive and home? This is the kind of question that keeps investigators up at night, the kind of detail that could be entirely innocent, or could be evidence of premeditation. According to the official story provided by Daniel Martel and Malahia Brooks Murray, sometime between 8 a.m. and 9:40 a.m. on May 2nd, they were both in the bedroom with their 1-year-old daughter, Meadow. This is a surprisingly vague time frame, an hour and 40 minutes where they supposedly were together in the bedroom, but neither of them can pinpoint exactly when things changed. They claim that Lily came in and out of the room several times during this period. A 6-year-old wandering in and out, maybe wanting attention, maybe bored, maybe not feeling well. They could hear Jack in the kitchen. The sounds of a 4-year-old moving around, maybe getting himself a snack, maybe playing. Normal morning sounds, normal activity. The kind of thing that happens in households with young children every single day across the world. And then, suddenly they realized they couldn't hear either child anymore. The house had gone quiet. Too quiet. Parents of young children know that silence can be more alarming than noise. When kids are quiet, they're often up to something. Getting into things they shouldn't, making messes, finding trouble. But this was different. This was an absence. A void where there should have been the constant background noise of childhood. When they went to investigate, when they emerged from the bedroom to check on Lily and Jack, the children were gone. Not in their rooms, not in the kitchen, not anywhere in the house. Gone. Now here's a detail that raises questions. Daniel Martel said he had placed a wrench on top of the front door the night before, a makeshift alarm system. The kind of thing someone might do if they're worried about security, or if they're worried about someone leaving without permission. The wrench was still in place that morning, undisturbed. So the children hadn't left through the front door. Or at least, if they had, whoever opened that door had been careful enough to replace the wrench exactly as it had been. But Martel's explanation was that this proved the children must have used another exit. He assumed they must have exited through the back sliding door, which he claimed was usually silent when opened. A sliding glass door that didn't squeak or make noise, that children could open and slip through without waking anyone, without alerting anyone. It's plausible. Many sliding doors operate smoothly and quietly, especially if they're well maintained. But it's also convenient. It creates a narrative where 2 small children, one allegedly sick with a cough, independently decided to go outside, successfully opened a door without making noise, and ventured into dangerous wilderness without any adult noticing. Brooks Murray stated that she and Martel then searched outside, calling for the children, yelling their names into the dense forest that surrounded their property. Can you imagine that panic? Realizing your children are gone, running outside, screaming their names, hearing nothing in response but the echo of your own voice bouncing off trees. It's every parent's nightmare. But was that panic genuine? Or was it performance? The beginning of a carefully constructed story designed to explain why 2 children would never be found. Here's where another person enters the narrative, and her testimony is crucial. Janie McKenzie, Daniel Martel's mother, lived in a separate building on the same property. She told police that she had fallen asleep around 8:50 a.m. that morning. She was awakened by her dog barking, a common occurrence. Dogs bark. It doesn't always mean something significant. But then she heard something that would become a key part of the timeline. She heard Jack and Lily playing on the swings in the backyard, laughing and having fun. Children's laughter. The unmistakable sound of kids at play. Then she went back to sleep, comforted by the normalcy of children playing on a spring morning. Think about that for a moment. Martel's mother heard the children playing outside, heard them laughing on the swings, before returning to sleep. This would place the children alive and outside the house sometime shortly after 8:50 a.m. But Martel and Brooks Murray claim they realized the children were missing around 9:40 a.m. So there's a window of less than an hour, probably closer to 30 or 40 minutes, where the children went from playing happily on the swings, supervised or unsupervised, we don't know, to completely vanishing without a trace. How does that happen? How do two children go from laughing and playing in their own backyard to disappearing so thoroughly that months of intensive searching would find no trace of them? Did they suddenly decide to explore the forest? Did something scare them and they ran? Or is there another explanation, one that doesn't involve the children wandering off at all? Here's a question that investigators undoubtedly asked. Did Janie Mackenzie actually see the children on the swings? Or did she just hear sounds she interpreted as the children playing? This is a critical distinction. If she saw them, if she looked out her window and visually confirmed that Lily and Jack were on the swings, that's solid evidence they were alive at that time. But if she only heard sounds, laughter, and the creaking of swings, that's different. Sounds can be misinterpreted. Sounds can be manufactured. If someone wanted to create the impression that children were outside playing, when in fact they were already gone, it wouldn't be difficult to make swing sets move, to play recordings, to create auditory evidence of life when there was none. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying it's a question that needs to be asked. Because in cases like this, investigators have to consider every possibility, no matter how dark. At 10:01 a.m., Malahia Brooks Murray called 911 to report Jack and Lily missing. The 911 call itself has not been released to the public, which is standard procedure in ongoing investigations, especially those involving children. But we know from police records that the call came in at that specific time, and that Brooks Murray reported her children had vanished from the property. According to the information provided to first responders, information that would be broadcast to all search teams and eventually to the public, Lily was likely wearing a pink sweater, pink pants, and pink boots when she disappeared. Jack was described as wearing blue dinosaur boots. These details would become part of the public alert, part of what volunteers and citizens were told to watch for. Two small children, one in pink, one in dinosaur boots, lost in the Nova Scotia wilderness. But here's something that bothers people who followed this case closely. If the children had just disappeared, if you just realized your kids were missing moments ago, would you remember exactly what they were wearing? Maybe. Parents dress their children. But small details like that, in a moment of absolute panic, are often fuzzy, unless you'd had time to think about it. Unless you'd had time to construct a narrative that included those specific details. I'm not saying Brooks Murray's memory of their clothing is suspicious. I'm saying it's something to note. Daniel Martel told police that while he was initially searching in the woods surrounding the property, he thought he heard a scream that sounded like it could be Jack or Lily, a child's scream cutting through the forest. But a helicopter was already flying overhead, part of the rapid response to the 911 call, and the noise from the helicopter rotors made it impossible to hear anything else. Was it really a scream? Was it one of the children calling for help from somewhere deep in the woods? Or was it the desperate imagination of a man claiming to search for missing stepchildren, trying to add credibility to the story that they'd wandered off? Sound in wilderness can be deceptive. It echoes, distorts, plays tricks on your ears. A bird can sound like a child. Wind through trees can sound like voices. And a man who needs people to believe children went into the forest might convince himself he heard something that wasn't there. Or he might claim to have heard something to reinforce the narrative. The response from authorities was swift. At 12:25 p.m. Atlantic Daylight Time on May 2nd, just 2 hours and 24 minutes after the initial 911 call, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police issued a public statement notifying the community about the disappearance. The RCMP is Canada's federal and national police service. and in Nova Scotia, they handle most rural policing. At that time, police stated they believed the children had simply wandered away from home and that there was no evidence of abduction. This was the initial working theory. Two small children, playing outside, wandered into the woods and got lost. It happens. Children are curious, fearless, and don't understand danger the way adults do. From a statistical standpoint, it was the most likely explanation. By 4:55 p.m. that same day, police released an update saying that a vulnerable missing persons alert had been issued for Pictou County, and they asked the public to stay away from the area where the disappearance had occurred to avoid interfering with the search operation. This is standard procedure. Well-meaning civilians can contaminate crime scenes, can trample evidence, can make search efforts more difficult. Police needed the area secured so trained professionals could work efficiently. But then something happened that night that would shift the investigation in a new direction. At 12:45 a.m. on May 3rd, just past midnight, less than 15 hours after reporting her children missing, Malahia Brooks Murray made another call to police. This call would introduce a new theory, a new suspect, a new direction for the investigation to pursue. She reported that the children's biological father, Cody Sullivan, with whom the children had no contact, might have taken the children to New Brunswick. This was significant. This changed everything. Up until this point, the working theory was that two small children had wandered into the wilderness and were lost, possibly injured, possibly succumbing to exposure. Now, suddenly, the mother was suggesting abduction, not by a stranger, but by the biological father, a man who had been out of the children's lives for years, but who, presumably, would have parental motivation to take them. Family abductions are different from stranger abductions. They usually don't end in harm to the children, though they're traumatic and illegal. If Cody Sullivan had taken his children, it would be a custody issue, a parental kidnapping, but the kids would likely be safe. But why did Malahia wait until after midnight to suggest this possibility? If she genuinely believed her ex-partner might have taken the children, wouldn't that have been the first thing she mentioned in the 911 call? Why wait hours? Was she genuinely considering all possibilities and this only occurred to her later? Or was she seeing that the search wasn't finding the children in the woods and needed to provide an alternative explanation, another direction for police to look so they wouldn't look too closely at what was happening in that house? Police responded to this information immediately and thoroughly. At 2:50 a.m. on May 3rd, just 2 hours after Brooks Murray's call, officers visited Cody Sullivan's residence. They woke him in the middle of the night, questioned him, asked where he'd been, asked if he had any contact with his children. He told them he hadn't seen Jack or Lily in 3 years. 3 years. These children had been completely absent from his life. He provided an alibi for his whereabouts on May 1st and 2nd. He cooperated fully. Police verified his statements. He wasn't involved. He hadn't taken his children. He was as shocked as anyone to learn they were missing. But police didn't just take his word for it. They requested security camera footage from the Cobequid Pass, a toll booth located on the Trans-Canada Highway, on the route from Nova Scotia to New Brunswick. If Cody Sullivan had driven toward New Brunswick with the children, his vehicle would have passed through that toll. The cameras would have captured it. They reviewed the footage. Nothing. Cody Sullivan's vehicle didn't pass through. No vehicle matching the description passed through with two small children visible inside during the relevant time frame. Cody Sullivan was cleared. Completely, definitively cleared, which meant investigators were back to square one. The children hadn't wandered into the woods and been found. The biological father hadn't taken them. So what happened? By May 3rd, just one day after the disappearance, the search effort had grown massive. This wasn't just local police anymore. This was becoming a provincial, even national emergency. At least 100 officers and volunteers were scouring the area around the Sullivan home using every tool available. Ground searches with teams walking in lines, covering every meter of terrain. Cadaver dogs, German shepherds and other breeds trained specifically to detect the scent of human remains, both recent and decomposed. Drones equipped with cameras flying over areas too dense or dangerous for humans to search on foot. And helicopters, flying in grids, using both visual observation and thermal imaging cameras that could detect body heat even through moderate tree cover. The terrain was brutal. We're talking about dense forest, the kind where you can't see more than a few meters ahead. Ravines that drop suddenly, hidden by undergrowth, thick underbrush, thorns, fallen trees, areas where even experienced searchers had to move slowly, carefully, to avoid injury. Places where a small child could easily become disoriented, injured, lost. But also places where searchers could easily miss critical evidence, where a small body could be hidden by nature within days. The spring weather in early May in Nova Scotia can be unpredictable. Daytime temperatures might reach 15 degrees Celsius, about 60 Fahrenheit, but at night, temperatures can drop close to freezing, especially in early May. If Lilly and Jack were out in those woods overnight, exposed to the elements, the cold alone could be fatal for children that young, particularly if they got wet from rain or crossing streams. Hypothermia can set in quickly. 4-year-old Jack especially would be vulnerable. His small body mass, his inability to maintain core temperature, the panic and fear of being lost all would accelerate the process. This is the nightmare scenario that drove the search efforts. Every hour that passed decreased the likelihood of finding the children alive if they were indeed lost in the wilderness. Time was the enemy, and time was running out. Malahia Brooks Murray spoke to CTV News on May 3rd, the day after her children disappeared. The interview was brief but emotional. She said she still had hope that the children would be found. She said, and I'm quoting here, "We just want them home as soon as possible." She explained that the night of May the 2nd had been one of the worst nights of her life because she didn't have her children in their beds, and she didn't want to spend another night without them. She appeared distraught, tearful, exactly how you'd expect a mother of missing children to appear. It was an emotional plea, the kind of statement any parent of missing children might make. Public appeals are common in these cases. They serve multiple purposes. They keep the case in the public eye. They encourage people with information to come forward. They humanize the victims, reminding everyone that these aren't just statistics. They're real children with a mother who loves them and wants them back. But public appeals also give investigators a chance to observe behavior, to look for tells, to see if the emotion seems genuine or performed. Detectives are trained to spot the difference. They watch body language, listen to word choice, note what's said and what's not said. Brooks Murray's interview would be analyzed, studied, compared to other statements she made. Was her grief authentic? Or was she playing a role? At that point, investigators probably weren't sure, but they were watching, carefully. On the same day, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston, the province's political leader, released a statement saying, "People in Pictou County and across Nova Scotia are praying for a positive outcome for these 2 missing children. During this time of concern, know that our first responders and volunteers are working tirelessly on this operation 24/7. Political leaders often make statements in high-profile cases like this. It acknowledges the public concern, supports the search efforts, and puts political weight behind finding answers. Nova Scotia is a small province, population less than 1 million people. When 2 children go missing, especially in circumstances this mysterious, the entire province pays attention. By May 4th, 2 days after the disappearance, the number of people involved in the search had reached 160, according to RCMP Sergeant Curtis McKinnon, who was serving as a spokesman for the investigation. 160 people. Police officers, search and rescue volunteers, civilian volunteers from the community. People taking time off work, leaving their own families, to search for 2 children they'd never met but whose plight had touched their hearts. Canadians pulling together in crisis, which is something that happens time and again in cases like this. Daniel Martel publicly stated on May 4th that he wanted authorities to monitor the New Brunswick border and nearby airports in case the children had been abducted. This was interesting. The mother had suggested the biological father might have taken them to New Brunswick, though that had been ruled out. Now the stepfather was pushing the abduction theory as well, expanding it to include airports. Was this a genuine concern? A stepfather desperate to explore every possibility? Or was it misdirection, trying to get police to look outward, towards strangers and distant locations, rather than looking inward at what was happening within the family? By this point, police had to be asking hard questions. The initial theory of children wandering into the woods wasn't panning out. Despite massive search efforts, despite trained dogs and helicopters and drones, despite hundreds of people covering every accessible piece of terrain, no trace of the children had been found, no clothing, no footprints beyond the immediate property, no signs of them in the forest at all. Either they'd gone farther and faster than seemed possible for children that age, especially a sick 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, or they'd never entered that forest at all. On May 6th, 4 days after the disappearance, something significant happened that revealed cracks in the family dynamic. Daniel Martel told CBC News that after the children's disappearance, Malaya Brooks Murray had left the region to stay with family in another part of Nova Scotia, and that she had blocked him on social media. Let that sink in. The mother of the missing children had left the area where her children disappeared. She'd gone to stay with her family elsewhere in the province, and she'd cut off communication with the stepfather, blocking him on Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media platforms they'd been connected on. This raised immediate red flags for anyone following the case closely. Why would she leave? If your children are missing, if search efforts are ongoing, if there's any chance they might be found alive and you need to be there when it happens, why would you leave the area? And why would you block the stepfather, your partner, the man you've been living with, the man who was also supposedly caring for your children when they disappeared? What had happened between them in those 4 days following the disappearance that caused such a severe rupture? There are several possible explanations. Maybe Brooks Murray couldn't bear to be in the house where her children had last been. Maybe the media attention was overwhelming and she needed to escape it. Maybe she was angry at Martel, blaming him for not watching the children more carefully. Maybe her family convinced her to come stay with them for support during an impossible time. All of these are plausible, understandable reasons. Or maybe something darker was at play. Maybe Brooks Murray knew something and was distancing herself from Martel to establish separation, to make sure she wasn't seen as complicit in whatever had happened. Maybe Martel knew something and Brooks Murray was cutting ties to protect herself. Maybe they both knew something and were having a dispute about how to handle it, about who would take the fall if the truth came out. We don't know, but the fact that the mother left and blocked the stepfather just days after their children vanished is significant. It suggests conflict, secrets, possibly guilt. The children's maternal grandmother, Cindy Murray, spoke with the Canadian press by phone around this time. She stated that the family was hoping and praying for the children's safe return. She also revealed that police had advised the family not to speak with the press. This is standard procedure in active investigations, especially ones this sensitive. Police don't want family members saying things publicly that might compromise the investigation, might tip off a suspect, might reveal evidence that should be kept confidential. But it also meant that the public was getting limited information, filtered through official police statements and occasional media appearances that may or may not have been approved by investigators. The lack of information can be frustrating for people following a case, but it's often necessary. Investigations can't be conducted in full public view. Evidence needs to be protected. Witnesses need to feel safe coming forward without having their identities splashed across the news. And suspects, if there are suspects, shouldn't know exactly what police know or don't know. On May 7th, just 5 days after the disappearance, police made an announcement that shocked many people who'd been following the case closely. They announced that the large-scale search for the children had been scaled back. Sergeant McKinnon stated there had been no confirmed sightings of the children and that given the terrain, the weather conditions, and the amount of time that had passed, it was unlikely the children were still alive if they had indeed wandered into the wilderness. The official search was being reduced after just 5 days. For many people, this was devastating news. How could they give up so quickly? 5 days isn't that long. Children have been found after being lost for longer periods. But the reality of wilderness searches is grim, and the people making these decisions understand statistics and survival rates better than the general public. If Lilly and Jack had wandered into those woods on the morning of May the 2nd, they would have been exposed to at least 4 nights of near-freezing temperatures. They had no food, no water, no shelter. A 6-year-old and a 4-year-old don't have the survival skills to find water, to stay warm, to avoid further danger. The chances of them surviving 5 days and nights in that environment was statistically almost zero. The search had been intensive and thorough. If they were in the immediate area, they would have been found. The fact that no trace had been discovered suggested either they'd somehow traveled much farther than anyone thought possible, which was unlikely, or they weren't in that forest at all. Scaling back didn't mean giving up entirely. Police officers would continue to investigate. K-9 units would continue to search when new areas of interest were identified. But the massive deployment of resources, the hundreds of volunteers, the constant helicopter flights, all of that had to be reduced. Resources are finite. Other emergencies happen. Other cases need attention. It's a brutal calculation, but it's reality. However, volunteers weren't ready to give up. The community wasn't ready to accept that Lilly and Jack were gone. On May 18th, 16 days after the disappearance, a new search was organized by local volunteers. 115 civilians showed up, in addition to police officers who continued to support community efforts. These were people from Pictou County and surrounding areas. Teachers, store workers, retirees, parents who couldn't imagine what the Brooks Murray family was going through and wanted to help in any way they could. They organized into teams, covered areas that hadn't been fully searched before, looked in places the official search might have missed. They found nothing. No trace of the children, no pink sweater, no dinosaur boots, no evidence that Lilly and Jack had been in that forest at all. Then, on May 28th, nearly 4 weeks after the disappearance, a representative from the RCMP's Major Crime Unit revealed something that changed the entire complexion of the case. They confirmed that the children had been seen in public with family members on May 1st, one day before they were reported missing by their mother and stepfather. At the time, the exact location was not disclosed. Police said revealing the location might affect the ongoing investigation, but it would later be confirmed that they were talking about the Dollarama footage from 2:25 p.m. on May 1st. Why is this so significant? Because it establishes a definitive timeline. The last verified independent confirmation that Lilly and Jack Sullivan were alive was May the 1st at 2:25 p.m. Everything after that, the evening of May 1st, the night of May 1st into May 2nd, the morning of May 2nd, all of it relies solely on the word of Malahia Brooks Murray and Daniel Martel. No teachers, because they weren't in school. No neighbors, because the property was isolated. No friends, no other family members who visited and saw the children. Just the two adults who were in that house, and Janie Mackenzie, who heard sounds she interpreted as the children playing, but who may or may not have actually seen them. If something happened to those children before the morning of May 2nd, if they died or were harmed on the evening of May 1st or during the night, no one outside that household would know. The timeline could be manipulated, a story could be constructed, and by the time police arrived on May 2nd, whatever happened would be long over. Evidence could be disposed of. A narrative could be established. Daniel Martel addressed the Dollarama footage in an interview with CBC News. He confirmed that police had recovered surveillance footage of him, Brooks Murray, their 1-year-old baby, as well as Lilly and Jack in New Glasgow on May 1st. He said the exact location where the footage was captured couldn't be disclosed at the time because it might affect the ongoing investigation. But we know now it was Dollarama. We know the time. We know that was the last time anyone outside the immediate family saw those children. What happened in the 18 hours and 36 minutes between 2:25 p.m. on May 1st and 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd? That's the window where Lilly and Jack Sullivan's fate was sealed, whatever that fate was. On June 11th, more than 5 weeks after the disappearance, the RCMP released a comprehensive update on the investigation. This wasn't a brief press statement. This was a detailed overview of what investigators had been doing, the resources being deployed, the scope of the effort to find these children. The agency stated that their intensive approach to the investigation was continuing, that they were considering all possible scenarios, and that they were collaborating with law enforcement agencies across the country. The RCMP revealed that over 11 different units from RCMP Nova Scotia were working the case. 11 specialized units. That includes the Major Crime Unit, which handles homicides and serious offenses, the Criminal Analysis Service, which analyzes patterns, connections, intelligence, forensics units, K9 units, digital forensics specialists, behavioral analysts. This wasn't a missing persons case anymore, not in the traditional sense. This was being treated like a major crime, even if police weren't saying that explicitly to the public. The agency revealed critical details about the investigation's scope that painted a picture of just how massive this effort had become. They had collected hundreds of hours of video from areas surrounding the disappearance location. Not just the Dollarama footage, but traffic cameras, security cameras from businesses, doorbell cameras from homes, any visual record that might show the family's movements or the presence of suspicious vehicles or persons in the area during the relevant time period. They had formally interviewed 54 people as part of the investigation. 54. That's not a casual chat. That's formal interviews, likely recorded, possibly conducted under caution. Who were these 54 people? Family members, definitely. Extended family, friends, neighbors, anyone who knew the family or had contact with them. Possibly teachers from the children's school, store employees from places the family frequented, other parents from the community. Each interview would have been analyzed, compared to other statements, checked for inconsistencies. And some of those 54 people were subjected to polygraph tests, lie detector tests. These tests measure physiological responses like heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, skin conductivity, looking for signs of stress or deception when specific questions are asked. Polygraphs aren't admissible in Canadian courts as evidence of guilt, but they're useful investigative tools. They can help police focus their efforts, can sometimes pressure someone with guilty knowledge to confess, can rule people out as suspects when they pass. Who was polygraphed? We don't know officially, but you can bet Malahia Brooks-Murray and Daniel Martel were asked to take polygraphs. In cases like this, the parents or guardians are always looked at first. Did they pass? Did they refuse? Did they fail? We don't know, because police haven't released that information. But the fact that polygraphs were administered tells us police had suspicions about someone close to the children. The RCMP had received 488 tips from the public by June. 488 separate pieces of information, each one needing to be assessed, prioritized, investigated. Most tips in high-profile cases lead nowhere. People report seeing children who look similar, but aren't the missing kids. People share theories based on hunches or dreams or misremembered information. But occasionally one tip is the golden thread that unravels the whole case. So every single one has to be taken seriously. The police had obtained numerous legal authorizations to seize and examine materials and devices that could be useful to the investigation. This means they went before judges, presented evidence justifying search warrants, and were granted permission to seize items. What items? Cell phones, computers, tablets, hard drives, financial records possibly, vehicles, clothing. Anything that might contain evidence of what happened to Lilly and Jack. In the digital age, phones and computers can reveal everything. Text messages, call logs, internet search history, deleted files that can be recovered by forensic specialists. If someone searched for things like, how long can a child survive in cold weather, or where to hide a body, or how to avoid police detection, that would be damning evidence. If someone deleted text messages between themselves and another person around the time of the disappearance, forensics can often recover those. If GPS data from a phone shows someone traveling to a location they denied visiting, that's a provable lie that demands explanation. Corporal Sandy Matharu, identified as the lead investigator on the case, made a statement during this June update. He said the RCMP was accessing, evaluating, and analyzing a significant volume of information from various sources. He emphasized their coordinated and deliberate approach, ensuring that all information was meticulously examined, prioritized, and processed so that nothing would be missed. This is the language of a thorough, professional investigation, but it's also the language of an investigation that's complex, that doesn't have easy answers, that requires patience and meticulous work. Reading between the lines, what Corporal Matharu was really saying is this: we have a lot of information, we're being very careful, we're building something, but we're not ready to make any moves yet. In criminal investigations, especially potential homicides, you get one shot. If you charge someone and the case falls apart in court, double jeopardy protections in Canada mean you can't try them again for the same offense. So police take their time. They make absolutely sure they have every piece of evidence locked down before they move. Even if they're 90% sure who's responsible, they wait until they're 99% sure and have the evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Summer passed. Weeks turned into months. The case remained in the public consciousness in Nova Scotia, but the daily news coverage died down. Other stories took over the headlines. Life moved on for everyone except those closest to Lilly and Jack. For Malahia Brooks-Murray, for Daniel Martel, for the extended family, for the investigators who woke up every day thinking about two missing children, life did not move on. The case consumed everything. Then, in August 2025, 3 months after the disappearance, something crucial happened that gave the public a glimpse into what investigators had been learning. Redacted court documents related to the case were released following a request made on behalf of major Canadian media outlets, the Globe and Mail, CBC News, and the Canadian Press. When police execute search warrants when they seize evidence, these actions are documented in court filings. The media argued that the public had a right to know what was happening in this high-profile case, and a judge agreed to release some of the documents, though with significant portions blacked out to protect the ongoing investigation and the privacy of individuals not charged with any crime. These documents revealed detailed information about the investigation that had previously been kept from the public, and one revelation stood out above all others, a statement that left people stunned and confused. As of July 16, 2025, 2.5 months after the disappearance, the RCMP had stopped considering the case as criminal in nature. Let me say that again because it's so important. The police were no longer treating this as a crime. After months of intensive investigation, after interviewing 54 people, after polygraph tests, after seizing devices and materials, after treating this like a major crime with 11 specialized units involved, the RCMP decided it was not criminal. What does that mean? How do you interpret that statement? There are several possibilities, and each one is troubling in its own way. Possibility 1, police determined that Lilly and Jack did wander into the wilderness, did die of exposure, and that their bodies simply haven't been found yet. That would mean no crime occurred, just a terrible tragedy of children wandering off while adults were momentarily distracted. But if that's what police believe, why haven't they said so clearly? Why the continued secrecy? Possibility 2, police investigated everyone thoroughly, including the parents and stepfather, and cleared them. They don't think any crime occurred because they don't think anyone harmed the children. But again, if that's the case, what do they think happened? And why keep investigating at all if there's no crime? Possibility 3, police suspect that someone harmed Lilly and Jack, but they don't have enough evidence to prove it. Without bodies, without physical evidence of violence, without a confession, it's nearly impossible to charge someone with murder or manslaughter. So even though investigators may believe a crime occurred, they can't call it criminal officially because they can't prove it in court. This would be the most frustrating scenario for everyone involved. Knowing but not being able to prove. Possibility 4. There's something in the evidence that points toward an explanation that's tragic but not criminal. Perhaps there was an accident in the home, something that caused the children's deaths but wasn't intentional or criminally negligent. Perhaps the parents panicked and hid what happened instead of reporting it immediately. That would still involve crimes like improper disposal of human remains, obstruction of justice, lying to police. But it wouldn't be murder. It would be a terrible accident followed by terrible decisions. We don't know which of these possibilities is accurate because the court documents were redacted. Large portions of information were blacked out, hidden from public view. We know the RCMP changed their classification of the case, but we don't know why. We don't know what evidence led to that decision. We don't know what those 54 interviews revealed. We don't know who passed the polygraph tests and who didn't, or if the polygraphs were even conclusive. We don't know what was found on the seized devices. And that brings us to where the case stands today, in December 2025, 7 months after Lilly and Jack Sullivan vanished from their home on Gairloch Road in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. The children are still missing. Despite exhaustive searches of the surrounding wilderness, despite hundreds of hours of police work, despite 488 tips from the public, despite forensic analysis and interviews and polygraphs and seizures of evidence, we are no closer to knowing definitively what happened to 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan on May 2, 2025. Their faces remain on missing persons posters throughout Nova Scotia and across Canada. Their cases discussed on true crime forums, Reddit threads, Facebook groups. People who never met these children spend hours analyzing the limited information available, debating theories, trying to make sense of a case that defies easy explanation. In October 2025, 5 months after the disappearance, the government of Nova Scotia took the unusual step of offering a substantial reward. They announced that up to $150,000 would be paid for information considered of investigative value in the search for the missing siblings. $150,000. That's not a token gesture. That's serious money, the kind of reward that could change someone's life. It's the kind of money that might motivate someone who knows something, someone who's been keeping quiet out of fear or loyalty or uncertainty, to finally come forward. Think about what kind of information would be worth $150,000. Not rumors or speculation. Not theories pulled from internet research. Information of investigative value means something concrete. Something that leads to finding the children, alive or deceased. Something that leads to charges being filed against whoever is responsible for their disappearance. Information that only someone directly involved or someone told by someone directly involved would possess. Who might have that information? If the children died in an accident at home, maybe a friend or relative that Malaya or Daniel confided in. Maybe someone who helped dispose of bodies. Maybe someone who knows where the children are buried. If something more sinister happened, maybe an accomplice. Maybe someone who was at the property that day and witnessed something. Maybe someone who's been living with guilty knowledge for 7 months and is finally ready to do the right thing. The reward announcement was significant because it signaled that investigators believe someone out there knows what happened. They're not searching blindly anymore. They're applying pressure, creating incentives for truth. As of today, the RCMP continues to investigate. The case file remains open. New tips are still being assessed. Corporal Matharu and his team haven't given up. But the reality is that without a major breakthrough, without someone coming forward with new information, without remains being discovered, this case could remain unsolved indefinitely. And that's a devastating reality for everyone who wants answers, who wants justice, who wants 2 children to finally be laid to rest with dignity. Let's talk about theories, about what various people following this case believe might have happened, because understanding the possibilities helps us understand why this case is so complex. The official initial theory, the one police worked with for days, was that the children wandered into the wilderness and died of exposure. 2 young children playing in the backyard, curious about the forest beyond, venturing past the property line, becoming disoriented quickly, unable to find their way back. The terrain swallowing them up, nature doing what nature does. It's a scenario that has happened before. Children do get lost in wilderness, they do die of exposure. It's tragic, but not uncommon. The problems with this theory are substantial. First, the grandmother heard them playing on swings. If they were in the backyard playing, supervised or at least within earshot, how did they suddenly bolt for the forest? Children that age don't usually make that kind of spontaneous decision without something triggering it. Second, Lily was supposedly sick with a cough bad enough to keep her home from school. Would a sick 6-year-old have the energy or inclination to go on an extended wilderness adventure? Third, and most damning, the massive search effort found absolutely nothing. No footprints beyond the immediate property, no torn clothing on branches. No scent trail that the cadaver dogs could follow for any distance. It's as if the children vanished into thin air from that backyard. Possible? Maybe, but improbable. Another theory that some have proposed is abduction by a stranger, that someone was watching the property, someone who knew the family's routines, knew when the children would be vulnerable. This person entered the property somehow, lured or grabbed the children, and escaped with them, possibly in a vehicle. This would explain why no trace was found in the forest. The children never went into the woods. They were taken away from the property entirely. The problem with this theory is the lack of any evidence supporting it. The property was isolated. The chances of a random predator being in that specific area at the exact moment the children were briefly unsupervised seems astronomically low. There were no reports of suspicious vehicles in the area, no reports of strangers hanging around, no tire tracks or footprints that didn't belong to family members or searchers. The RCMP has consistently stated there's no evidence of abduction. If they had found any indication of a stranger being involved, any forensic evidence, any witness reports, that would be a lead pursued aggressively. The absence of that pursuit suggests there's nothing there. Some people have speculated about the biological father despite his being cleared. The thinking goes that maybe Cody Sullivan had help, maybe someone else grabbed the children on his behalf, maybe there's a custody dispute motivation we don't know about. But police investigated this thoroughly. They cleared him. They found no connection. His alibi was solid. Unless there's a massive conspiracy we're not aware of, this theory doesn't hold up. And then there's the theory that makes everyone uncomfortable. The one that investigators almost certainly examined closely, even if they won't say so publicly. The theory that the children never left the property alive on the morning of May 2nd. That something happened to Lilly and Jack before that morning, or during those unaccounted hours, and the entire story of them wandering off is a fabrication designed to explain their absence. That the truth lies within that house, within the actions or inactions of the adults who were supposed to protect those children. Let's examine why people find this theory compelling, why it's the one that won't go away despite the lack of criminal charges. First, the timeline inconsistencies. Malahia Brooks Murray changed her story about bedtime from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Why? Daniel Martell stayed up after she went to bed, doing unknown activities for unknown amounts of time. What was he doing? Second, the children were last seen publicly at 2:25 p.m. on May 1st. Everything after that relies on statements from Brooks Murray and Martell, two people whose accounts don't perfectly align. Third, the grandmother heard sounds she interpreted as children playing, but may not have actually seen them. Sounds can be manufactured or misinterpreted. Fourth, Malahia left the area shortly after the disappearance and blocked Daniel on social media. This suggests serious conflict between them, possibly about what happened, possibly about who's to blame. Fifth, both were almost certainly polygraphed, and while we don't know the results, the fact that the investigation continued intensively suggests someone didn't pass or the results were inconclusive. Sixth, devices were seized, which means police were looking for digital evidence of planning or cover-up. Seventh, 54 people were formally interviewed. Many likely asked specific questions about the family dynamics, about whether they'd noticed anything concerning about how the children were treated, and perhaps most significantly, the fact that police conducted such an intensive investigation for months, treating it like a major crime, only to announce it's no longer being considered criminal. This could mean they investigated every angle, including the possibility of harm by parents, and found insufficient evidence to proceed with charges, not because they don't think something happened, but because they can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. In cases of suspected child homicide by parents, the biggest obstacle for prosecutors is the lack of a body. Without physical remains, it's extraordinarily difficult to prove a death occurred at all, much less that it was caused criminally. Defense attorneys can argue the children ran away, were abducted by person or persons unknown, are still alive somewhere. Without a body, without physical evidence of violence, without a confession, even strong circumstantial evidence might not be enough to secure a conviction. And prosecutors don't bring cases they don't think they can win. So we're left with a frustrating reality. 7 months after 2 children vanished, we have no bodies, no arrests, no clear answers. Just a community in pain, a family torn apart by tragedy or secrets or both, and investigators who may know more than they can say but can't act without the evidence they need. What happens next in the Sullivan case depends on whether new information emerges. That's why the $150,000 reward is so important. Money talks. Someone out there might know something, might have been told something, might have seen something that would crack this case wide open. A deathbed confession from a family member. A drunk admission at a bar overheard by a stranger. A child from the family who overheard adults talking and didn't understand the significance at the time, but is now old enough to come forward. A forensic breakthrough in analyzing seized evidence. Remains discovered by hikers or hunters in a remote area. Any of these could change everything, or none of them might happen. And Lilly and Jack Sullivan will join the long list of missing children whose fates remain unknown, whose cases haunt investigators and communities for generations. What do you think happened on May 2nd, 2025? Do you believe Lilly and Jack wandered into the wilderness and died of exposure, their small bodies hidden somewhere searchers missed? Do you think there was an abduction that police simply haven't found evidence of yet? Or do you believe something darker happened, something within that house, something that the people responsible have managed to hide? Share your theories in the comments below. Cases like this need public attention. Sometimes a tip from someone watching a video exactly like this one, someone who remembers seeing something or hearing something in their own community, can be the breakthrough investigators desperately need. If this documentary has impacted you, if you believe in demanding answers for missing children, if you think cases like this deserve attention until they're solved, then subscribe to True Crime Vault. We don't just cover cases superficially. We investigate them thoroughly, present all available evidence, examine all theories, and keep pressure on for justice. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and you'll never miss an update when new evidence emerges or cases develop. And please, take a moment to hit the like button and share this video. The more people who know about Lilly and Jack Sullivan, the better the chances that someone with information will finally come forward. These children deserve to be found. They deserve to come home, even if it's not the homecoming anyone wanted. Their family deserves answers, deserves closure, deserves to know what happened. And if someone harmed these innocent kids, if someone is responsible for their disappearance and has been living free while a community suffers, they deserve to face justice. Until that day comes, we'll keep covering this case, keep asking the hard questions, keep demanding truth, and keep the memory of Lilly and Jack Sullivan alive. If you have any information about the disappearance of Lilly Sullivan and Jack Sullivan, please contact the Royal Canadian Mounted Police immediately. The tip line is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can remain anonymous. You can call from anywhere. Even the smallest detail, something that might seem completely insignificant to you, could be the piece of the puzzle investigators have been missing. $150,000 is being offered for information of investigative value. But more important than any reward, you could be the person who finally brings 2 children home, who gives a community closure, who ensures that whoever is responsible faces consequences. Thank you for watching this True Crime Vault documentary. Remember, these aren't just stories for entertainment. These are real children with real lives that were cut short or disrupted. These are real families living through unimaginable pain. These are real mysteries that deserve our respect, our attention, and our commitment to finding truth. Lilly Sullivan was 6 years old. She loved the color pink. Jack Sullivan was 4 years old. He loved dinosaurs. They had their whole lives ahead of them. They should be in school right now, learning and growing and making memories. Instead, on May 2nd, 2025, they vanished from a rural property in Nova Scotia, and 7 months later, we're still searching for answers. The search continues, the investigation continues, and we won't stop asking questions until those answers finally come to light.